A realm of extreme nature, the Southern Ocean's unforgiving power. At the very bottom of the planet lies an ocean unlike any other on Earth. Vast, restless, and brutally cold, the Southern Ocean encircles Antarctica in an unbroken ring of water, making it the only ocean that flows completely around the globe without ever touching land. This unique geography gives it a freedom and a fury that no other ocean possesses. Here, waves routinely rise higher than five-story buildings, driven by winds that howl relentlessly at speeds exceeding 70 miles per hour. These winds are not seasonal visitors. They are permanent residents. With nothing to slow them down, they race endlessly around the southern hemisphere, sculpting the sea into towering swells that can travel thousands of miles without losing strength. Sailors who enter these waters are not simply navigating an ocean, they are confronting a force of nature in constant motion. The temperatures add another layer of danger. The water hovers just above freezing, typically between 28 and 32 degrees Fahrenheit. In these conditions, survival is measured not in hours, but in minutes. A person who falls overboard faces almost certain death, as the cold strips heat from the body faster than it can be replaced. Even modern ships, built from steel and guided by satellite navigation, remain vulnerable to the combined assault of wind, ice, and waves. Mariners have long recognized this ocean's hostility. For centuries, sailors gave its latitudes ominous names: the Roaring Forties, the Furious Fifties, and the Screaming Sixties. These names were not exaggerations, they were warnings, passed down through generations of seafarers who learned, often painfully, that the Southern Ocean does not forgive mistakes. Beneath the surface, one of the most powerful forces on the planet is at work. Driven by these relentless winds is the Antarctic circumpolar current, the strongest ocean current on Earth. It moves more water than all the world's rivers combined, linking the Atlantic, Indian, and Pacific Oceans into a single global system. This current redistributes heat, nutrients, and energy around the planet, playing a critical role in regulating Earth's climate. Covering nearly 7.8 million square miles, almost twice the size of the continental United States, the Southern Ocean remains one of the least explored places on Earth. Its scattered islands, such as South Georgia and the South Orkneys, are tiny outposts surrounded by thousands of miles of open water. There are no calm harbors here, no gentle coastlines, only ice, wind, and an endless horizon. From the very beginning, this ocean has demanded respect. It is not merely cold or remote. It is alive with motion and power. And it is within this hostile environment that humanity's long and dangerous relationship with the Southern Ocean begins. For most of human history, the Southern Ocean existed only as an idea. On ancient maps, the bottom of the world was left deliberately vague, marked by empty space or imaginative drawings of sea monsters and unknown lands. Early geographers believed that a vast southern continent terra australis, incognita, must exist to balance the weight of the known continents in the north. It was a theory born from symmetry, not observation, and for centuries, no one had proof it was real. Everything began to change during the age of exploration. By the late 16th and early 17th centuries, European powers were racing to expand trade routes and empires. Ships pushing around Cape Horn and through the southern Atlantic found themselves drawn farther south than ever before, often by accident rather than intention. These sailors were not searching for Antarctica. They were searching for faster passages, favorable winds, and economic advantage. What they encountered instead was an ocean that challenged every assumption they had about the sea. In 1599, the Dutch navigator Dirk Gerrits claimed to have sighted snow-covered mountains south of Cape Horn after being blown off course by violent storms. Some historians believe this may have been the first human glimpse of the Antarctic Peninsula, though the account remains debated. What matters more than certainty is what it represented: the first crack in the long-standing belief that the southern world was entirely unknown. Over the next century, explorers pushed deeper into these hostile latitudes. In 1642, Abel Tasman sailed far south into roaring winds and icy seas, encountering nothing but endless water and freezing gales. Decades later, in 1700, The English astronomer and navigator Edmund Halley, better known for the comet that bears his name, ventured into the Southern Ocean to study magnetic variation. His voyage confirmed what sailors were beginning to suspect. This was not a hidden landmass, but a vast, storm-driven ocean unlike anything in the north. By the mid-18th century, the myth of a warm, habitable southern continent was fading. The final blow came in the 1770s with the voyages of Captain James Cook. During his second expedition, Cook crossed the Antarctic Circle 3 times, sailing farther south than any human before him. In January 1773, aboard HMS Resolution and Adventure, he came within roughly 80 miles of the Antarctic coast before impenetrable ice forced him to turn back. Cook's journals describe an endless wall of ice stretching east and west beyond the horizon, a frozen barrier that no wooden ship could penetrate. He famously wrote that the land beyond was doomed by nature to perpetual frost, a place where no nation would profit and no human settlement could endure. In doing so, Cook effectively erased Antarctica as a commercial fantasy, but he placed the Southern Ocean firmly on the map. His charts and observations transformed vague speculation into measurable geography. For the first time, the Southern Ocean was no longer a blank space filled with myths. It was a real, defined region cold, dangerous, and vast waiting to be understood. And while Cook believed he had reached the practical limits of exploration, he unknowingly opened the door to the next phase of human activity in the far south. Because once the mystery was gone, curiosity and ambition quickly followed. The age of scientific discovery and industrial exploitation was just beginning, and the Southern Ocean was about to become a new frontier, not only for explorers, but for those willing to risk everything in pursuit of profit. When the early explorers returned home with stories of vast, untouched wildlife in the far south, it did not take long for another kind of expedition to follow. By the late 18th century, the Southern Ocean was no longer seen primarily as a place of mystery or scientific curiosity. It had become a frontier of profit. And with that shift came one of the most destructive chapters in its history. The first industry to take hold was sealing. British and American ships began arriving at remote islands such as South Georgia, the South Shetlands, and the Kerguelen Islands, isolated specks of land surrounded by thousands of miles of storm-driven sea. These islands offered little shelter, but they were rich in fur seals, whose pelts were in high demand for clothing, hats, and trade goods. Seal oil, rendered from blubber, fueled lamps and lubricated machinery in an industrializing world hungry for resources. The slaughter was swift and ruthless. Crews worked in freezing winds, killing seals by the thousands, often leaving carcasses strewn across the beaches. Within just a few decades, millions of animals were taken, pushing entire seal populations to the brink of extinction. Some species vanished from certain islands altogether, their numbers collapsing long before any conservation laws existed to protect them. Life for the men involved was almost as brutal as the work itself. Sealing crews were often left ashore for months at a time, living in crude stone huts or tents made from sealskins. They endured constant cold, isolation, and violence from the weather, with little hope of rescue if something went wrong. Injury, disease, and death were common, but the promise of profit kept the ships coming south. When seal populations collapsed in the early 19th century, attention turned to a much larger and more lucrative target: whales. At first, hunters focused on sperm whales in the subantarctic waters. But as technology advanced, industrial whaling pushed deeper into the Southern Ocean itself. The arrival of steam-powered ships, explosive harpoons, and floating factory vessels transformed whaling from a dangerous hunt into a highly efficient industry. Whales could now be killed far from shore and processed at sea. Massive whaling stations sprang up on islands like South Georgia, complete with workshops, storage tanks, rail systems, and housing for hundreds of workers. Norwegian whalers led much of this expansion, followed by British fleets and later Japanese operations. At its peak, the Southern Ocean became the center of global whaling, supplying oil for lighting, lubrication, and food products such as margarine. For the men who worked these stations, conditions were extreme. Ice-coated decks, heavy machinery, and sudden storms made every task dangerous. Frostbite was common, accidents frequent, and the air was thick with the smell of rotting blubber. Yet the wages, though modest, were enough to keep workers coming, drawn by the promise of steady pay in a harsh world. By the mid-20th century, the consequences of this exploitation were impossible to ignore. Whale populations collapsed at an unprecedented scale. Blue whales, the largest animals ever to exist, were hunted so aggressively that by the 1960s, fewer than 1% of their original population remained. International bans came too late to save most of the industry. One by one, the whaling stations shut down, and in 1965, the last station on South Georgia closed its doors. What remained were abandoned buildings, rusting boilers, and unmarked graves scattered across the island's silent reminders of a time when human ambition pushed relentlessly into one of the most hostile environments on Earth. The Southern Ocean had been treated as an endless resource, and it responded by revealing its limits. Beyond the harbors and whaling stations, the ocean itself remained unchanged. Storms still roared, ice still crushed ships, and waves still rose without warning. The age of profit had faded, but the Southern Ocean's reputation endured. It had proven that while humans could exploit its wildlife, they could never truly control the sea that surrounded it. The Southern Ocean has earned its reputation not through legend, but through loss. Its dangers do not come from a single threat, but from everything happening at once. Storms rise with little warning, cold fronts sweep across the water at full speed, and waves form without pattern or mercy. In these latitudes, a calm sea can become chaos in minutes, leaving crews with no time to react. Sailors have long reported the ocean's most terrifying feature: sudden walls of water that rise out of an otherwise regular swell. These rogue waves can roll a ship onto its side or smash through its superstructure, even on modern steel vessels. Cold only multiplies the danger. Freezing spray coats railings, ladders, and decks in ice, turning every movement into a risk. As ice builds up on a ship's upper structure, vessels become dangerously top-heavy, forcing crews to work in open storms, chipping away ice to prevent capsizing. Falling overboard in the Southern Ocean is almost always fatal. The water drains body heat so rapidly that survival is measured in minutes, not hours. Communication offers little reassurance. Heavy weather disrupts radio signals and satellite connections, and even when a distress call gets through, rescue is never immediate. Aircraft and ice-capable ships must fight their way across vast distances, often through the same storms that caused the emergency. In this ocean, help does not arrive quickly, if it arrives at all. History is filled with ships that never returned. One of the earliest and most haunting losses occurred in 1819. A Spanish warship named San Telmo departed Cadiz with nearly 650 men aboard, bound for Callao, Peru. To reach the Pacific, she was forced through the Drakepassage, the most violent stretch of water on Earth. As the fleet approached Cape Horn, a powerful storm scattered the ships. San Telmo was last seen battling hurricane-force winds and massive seas before vanishing into the gray Southern Ocean. Months later, wreckage believed to be from San Telmo washed ashore on Livingston Island near the Antarctic Peninsula. No survivors were ever found. If the identification is correct, her crew may have been the first humans to reach Antarctica decades before official exploration, only to die there in silence. Their disappearance marked the grim beginning to humanity's direct encounters with the Antarctic region. Not every story ended in total loss. In the early 20th century, the Swedish Antarctic expedition, led by Otto Nordenskjöld, sailed aboard a small wooden ship named Antarctic. Built for sealing and reinforced for ice, she was still poorly suited for the conditions she faced. After 2 years of supporting scientific work along the Antarctic Peninsula, the ship became trapped in pack ice in 1903. Slowly and relentlessly, the pressure crushed her hull until she broke apart. The crew abandoned ship and struggled across the ice to Pollet Island, where they survived a brutal winter by hunting penguins and building a crude stone shelter. Months later, through a combination of skill, timing, and extraordinary luck, the stranded groups reunited and were rescued. Every man survived, The loss of Antarctic became a rare example of survival in a region more often defined by tragedy. But luck was not always enough. In 1907, the British steel bark Dandao met disaster near the Auckland Islands, far north of Antarctica, but still within the reach of the Southern Ocean's fury. Attempting to save time, the captain sailed too close to shore in heavy fog. The ship struck the cliffs of Disappointment Island and broke apart in the pounding surf. Of the 28 men aboard, only 17 reached shore alive. With no tools, no fire, and almost no food, the survivors endured months of misery. They lived in holes dug into the peat, stitched crude clothing from bird skins, and survived on raw seabirds. 4 men eventually built a fragile raft from wreckage and crossed freezing seas to reach Auckland Island, where a supply depot offered their only chance of rescue. 15 men ultimately survived. 13 did not. Perhaps the most famous of all Southern Ocean disasters came in 1915, when Sir Ernest Shackleton's ship Endurance was crushed by ice in the Weddell Sea. Trapped for months, the ship finally succumbed to the pressure and sank beneath the ice, leaving 28 men stranded hundreds of miles from land. Through extraordinary leadership, discipline, and endurance, Shackleton led his crew across ice and open ocean, ultimately saving every life. Their survival became one of the greatest stories in maritime history, but it began with total disaster. Together, these wrecks tell a single story. The Southern Ocean does not care about experience, technology, or intention. Wooden ships and steel hulls alike have been broken by its storms and ice. Some crews survived through skill and luck. Many others vanished without a trace. The charts, journals, and wrecks scattered across the seafloor stand as evidence that this ocean is not merely dangerous, it is unforgiving. For all its cold and fury, the Southern Ocean is far from empty. Beneath its storm-tossed surface lies one of the most productive and tightly balanced ecosystems on Earth. Life here survives not despite the harsh conditions, but because of them. At the center of this world is a creature no larger than a human finger, Antarctic krill. These small, shrimp-like animals gather in swarms so vast and dense they can be seen from space. Billions move together in living clouds, feeding on microscopic phytoplankton that bloom beneath the ice during the Antarctic summer. Krill form the foundation of the Southern Ocean food web. Almost every major predator in these waters depends on them, either directly or indirectly. If krill disappear, the entire system begins to unravel. Each year, the largest animals ever to exist on Earth migrate thousands of miles to feed here. Blue whales, humpbacks, and fin whales arrive in the Southern Ocean during the brief summer season, consuming tons of krill each day to build the energy reserves they need to survive the rest of the year. Their presence transforms the ocean, turning these cold waters into a feeding ground of global importance. Below the surface, elephant seals dive more than a mile deep in search of squid, holding their breath for over an hour at a time. Leopard seals patrol the edges of the ice, powerful and efficient predators that hunt penguins with speed and precision. Above the waves, the sky is rarely empty. Wandering albatrosses, with wingspans stretching over 11 feet, glide for weeks without landing, riding the endless winds that circle the continent. Petrels, skuas, and terns fill the air, perfectly adapted to life in one of the harshest climates on Earth. On land, the coastline comes alive in vast colonies of penguins. Emperor, Adelie, Chinstrap, and Gentoo penguins each occupy their own ecological niche, shaped by ice, distance, and food availability. Some breed deep in the Antarctic winter, enduring months of darkness and temperatures that plunge far below zero. Others nest on rocky shores, raising their chicks in the narrow window between ice retreat and the return of winter. Beneath the ice itself, life has evolved in extraordinary ways. Fish and invertebrates thrive in near-freezing water thanks to natural antifreeze proteins in their blood, preventing ice crystals from forming in their tissues. Many of these species are found nowhere else on Earth, the result of millions of years of isolation in a stable but extreme environment. Yet this balance is fragile. Overfishing of krill, combined with rising ocean temperatures, is already altering migration patterns and breeding cycles. Shrinking sea ice reduces the habitat where krill feed and reproduce, forcing predators to travel farther south each year in search of food. Scientists have recorded changes in population numbers across multiple species, early warning signs that the system is under strain. The Southern Ocean may appear timeless and unchanging, but it is not immune to human influence. Small disruptions at the base of the food web can echo upward, affecting whales, seals, birds, and entire ecosystems. What makes this ocean so powerful also makes it vulnerable. Its life is interconnected, and its margins for error are thin. In this remote and seemingly indestructible place, survival depends on balance. And that balance is now being tested, not by storms or ice, but by decisions made far beyond the horizon. Over the past century, the Southern Ocean has entered a new phase in its long and turbulent history. What was once a frontier of exploitation has gradually become a frontier of understanding. By the mid-20th century, the focus shifted away from hunting and profit towards science, cooperation, and preservation. This change marked a turning point not only for Antarctica, but for the planet itself. In the 1950s and 1960s, nations from around the world came together during the International Geophysical Year, launching an unprecedented wave of scientific research in the far south. Soon after, the Antarctic Treaty was signed, establishing the continent and the surrounding ocean as a place dedicated to peace and science rather than territorial claims or military power. Few international agreements have endured as successfully. For decades, the treaty has helped protect one of Earth's last great wildernesses from large-scale exploitation. Today, research vessels operate year-round in the Southern Ocean, collecting critical data on ocean temperature, salinity, currents, and sea ice. Scientists have discovered that this ocean plays a central role in regulating Earth's climate. It absorbs vast amounts of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and redistributes heat through powerful currents that influence weather patterns across the globe. Changes here ripple outward, affecting sea levels, storm systems, and coastal environments thousands of miles away. Tourism followed science, beginning cautiously in the late 1960s. Small expedition ships started carrying passengers eager to see Antarctica's glaciers, penguin colonies, and the remains of old whaling stations. What began as an experiment has grown into a seasonal industry, with thousands of visitors arriving each year, mostly from South America. Strict regulations now control where ships can go, how many people may land, and how closely wildlife can be approached. Even so, every voyage is a reminder that technology does not guarantee safety in these waters. As the planet warms, the Southern Ocean is changing faster than expected. Rising temperatures are accelerating the melting of Antarctic ice, contributing to global sea level rise and altering ocean circulation. Shrinking sea ice is already affecting krill populations, the foundation of the Antarctic food web. In some regions, scientists are observing early signs of decline, driven by a combination of warming waters and industrial harvesting. If krill populations collapse, the consequences will extend far beyond the Southern Ocean. Whales, seals, penguins, and seabirds would suffer first, but the impact would not stop there. Because this ocean helps regulate Earth's climate, disruptions here could influence weather patterns around the world. Scientists warn that what happens in the far south does not stay in the far south. There is still reason for cautious optimism. Expanding marine protected areas, satellite monitoring, and international fisheries regulations are helping limit human impact. The Antarctic Treaty System remains one of the strongest examples of global cooperation, though future political and economic pressures may test its resilience. The decisions made in boardrooms, parliaments, and laboratories far from Antarctica will shape the fate of this ocean for generations to come. The Southern Ocean is more than a body of water surrounding a frozen continent. It is a driving force in Earth's climate system, a connector of oceans, and a living archive of exploration, survival, and loss. For centuries, it has tested human ambition, shattered ships, and humbled even the most determined explorers. Its winds still roar through the latitudes sailors once feared, and its waves still rise without warning. Yet within that hostility lies extraordinary beauty and resilience. Beneath the ice, life thrives. Above it, seabirds trace ancient routes across endless skies. The Southern Ocean may appear empty, but it pulses with life and meaning at the edge of the world. In the end, the question it poses to humanity has not changed. How far can we push into the unknown before nature reminds us who is in control? The maps may be complete now, but here where ice meets storm mystery remains. Wild, unforgiving, and endlessly fascinating, the Southern Ocean continues to shape the balance of the planet itself.